I can get everyone's attention. I want to welcome you guys all to the Public Safety Forum. We put this together for a focus on the council candidate election to ensure that we were focusing on public safety and seeing what our candidates felt about our public safety entities. Currently I have in front of you, I'm the union president for your fire association in the city. My name is Scott Blasser. We have Romy Navarro, who's representing and Officer Ray Poole, and he is representing the I'd like to thank you guys all for coming. First of all, thank the community. It's really nice to see community involvement. I've been enjoying this election cycle to see the different forums, the participation, and the level of people coming out. We're a small community, and a few amount of people end up making a vote for a lot of people. So when we see a lot of people show up to this stuff, it gives me kind of hope that we're going to see big numbers at the polls. So I really applaud you guys for coming out and being politically active in our community. I want to thank the candidates for coming out and putting themselves out here and making themselves available to the community and being invested in the community. It's probably not easy to sit up here and sit and take questions under fire, let alone when you finally get to sitting at the council dealing with the time that you have to there in the community. We're a contentious bunch, I would say. So I think for the right reasons though. Last of all, I'd like to thank the Student Senate and the college. They've made this space available, I think, for multiple events regarding to the politics that are in our town. Without this resource, we would be a lot worse off. So I really do appreciate the help they've given us. So with that, we'll get into the format for tonight. It's going to be pretty typical, similar to previous forums. We just have the candidates sitting up here. They're in alphabetical order. We're trying to keep it as non-biased as possible, so no one can argue with the alphabet. And so we're just going to be drawing names out of a hat, or out of a cup, actually. Once that name comes out, that'll be the candidate we start with. Microphone's going to pass to the left for those candidates, and then it'll rotate all the way around until they've all answered the question. For police, we're going to start with police, move to the nurses, and then have fire ask 2 questions each. With those questions, there'll be a follow-up section where they'll have 30 seconds to respond to anything that they wanted to cover, so that they didn't get in their questions. So that gives equal time. At the end of that, if there is some time left for us to have questions, what I'd like people to do is, if you have something to write on, just write discreetly and put a question up on this table right here, and I will take time to walk over and take a look at that, and I'll randomly draw a question, and we'll ask that one if there is time for us to add that to the event. So we don't want to exclude that, and I do appreciate the people who emailed questions, and we tried to integrate those into our format tonight. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Oh, yeah. This is the first time I've ever done one of these, so forgive me, but we're going to go ahead and have the council candidates go ahead and do an introduction. So they've been given a minute each to speak to the group and do opening comments. They'll also do some closing comments. So would you guys be opposed if we started on the left side and then moved over, and then when we close, we'll start on the right? Does that sound good? All right, so Cody.
Good evening, my name is Cody Bass. I'm running for city council. I've been here in Tahoe for 20 years. Moved here when I was 17 years old and started at Heavenly Ski Resort as a snowmaker for 6 seasons, working as well in the summers. I went on to purchase Hot Gossip as a coffee shop back in 2007. I also worked at Alpine Sierra Coffee Shop for many summers when I was a younger kid. And then in 2009, I opened Tahoe Wellness Cooperative, which was the first cannabis cooperative or dispensary here in Tahoe. And since then, have been engaged a lot in the community, a lot with the city, and have come to get a deep understanding of how the city of South Lake operates. I have a real passion to see South Lake Tahoe thrive and that my vision moving forward can add a lot into the future of making this a recreation destination and a place that we can all thrive in and work together to make those goals and dreams a possibility. So I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Hal Cole. This is our last forum. Was good because I ran out of dress shirts. I've worn this one for the second time. So a little worse. I've been up here since '59. I went to high school up here. Went to UC Davis for 6 years, playing a rock and roll band. Then came back. Got into construction. Soon I felt the need to get involved with politics. I've run for city council 5 times, was elected 5 times. I've been out for 2 years. I wasn't intending to come back. But there's a couple issues that really brought me back. One is our city now is facing a structural deficit over the next few years, and it might be exacerbated by Measure T and by the PERS. And I felt somebody with this much experience, I think that the city will probably need some good leadership with a brand new city manager and city attorney. And I'm also concerned about the roads. I was hoping that we would get some kind of funding source and start our roads. Those are 2 of my passions, to make sure the city gets through this next period with a possible economic downturn and PERS, and would finally find a way to fix our roads. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Wendy David, and I'm seeking my 2nd term on the City Council. I, too, have been an elected official in this community for many years. I served 4 terms on the Lake Tahoe Unified School District Board of Education and ran for City Council, and now I'm running for my 2nd term. I have been a leader in this community for about 4 decades. Helped found Bread and Broth and co-founder of the Tahoe Women's Community Fund and other things, Tahoe Magic as well. I am excited to run for a 2nd term. I feel like our community is in a renaissance of sorts, and we are building for the future. I do agree with all the council members up here that we have some issues that are our #1 issues. So many #1 issues that include roads, that include getting our rec center built, that include looking at our PERS obligation, that include looking at our budget overall and how we can manage a budget with what our topic's going to be tonight, which is going to be public safety. So these are big issues. I've spent the first 4 years learning and leading, and am happy to serve another 4 years if elected.
Thank you. I'm Tom Davis. Came here in 1971 to ski one winter, still here. Not skiing as much as I'd like. I worked 20 years actually, Sahara Tahoe, High Sierra and Horizon. Looks like I worked for 3 hotels, but never moved. I've been very proud to be part of this community. I raised my family here. My kids were raised here. In fact, my son is a deputy sheriff, daughter-in-law is a nurse, and my daughter is in the healthcare business. So I understand it. My priorities always have been, if you look at my materials, from day one is police and fire, snow removal, and of course now roads, which we'll talk about later. But thank you for having us. This is an important forum. This is an important group. Thank you.
My name is Bruce Grego. I'm, of course, a candidate for City Council. I've lived in our community now for 51 years. I've been a local attorney in this town for 38. My parents moved up here in 1967, and we operated a motel. I've been engaged with city matters for a long time. I was on the city council between 2008 and 2012. And one of the things I think I demonstrated when I was on the council is that I was able to work with everyone else on the council to look for solutions, even though we might have different opinions. And I think that's an important issue today. Of course, there's lots of issues. I want to see the loop road question placed in the ballot. We need to fix our roads. We need sustainability issues concerning pensions and the issues that confront us. We need to look for ways to expand our economy. So what is that? I think so. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Patrick Jarrett. I'm running for a seat on the City Council, City of South Lake Tahoe. The reason I'm doing this is because I love this city. We can all sit up here and say how much we love this city. But I grew up here from the age of 8 till now. So 40 years living Tahoe, minus the 4 years that I served in the United States Army. I care a lot about this community, and I hear a lot of the complaints of this community and what people are saying and what people have said at the ballot box. One of the things they said at the ballot box was recreational cannabis. And the city's gone back and forth on this, and it's been 2 years, and haven't figured it out. Another thing is the VHRs. It's gone as far as to go to the ballot box again. And this time, it's gone to what I think are draconian measures. We've gone to the far left-wing side of this. So, I respectfully ask for your vote this November 6th. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Devin Middlebrook, and I'm running for City Council to bring new ideas, leadership, and diversity to the city. I was lucky enough to be born and raised in Tahoe, and 5 years ago moved back to this community after attending college. And there's a lot of great things happening in town right now, but we really need a vision for our future that capitalizes on our outdoors and our community to create economic prosperity. My top priorities include jobs, housing, economic development, funding our roads, and expanding high-speed internet. And we're really at a critical point in our history, and we need new ideas and diverse leaders to solve those issues that we're facing. And I'm running for City Council because I really love this community. And we must act now. Now's the time to push us over the edge and create the future of Lake Tahoe that we all deserve.
Hello, my name is Austin Sass. I've been your city councilman for the last 4 years. I've been mayor 1 year. I also represent the city on the TRPA Governing Board and the Tahoe Transportation District Board and the Recreation JPA. Everyone in the room who's in fire, police, and in nursing knows that in order to be successful in critical situations, you need to put the time in to train, you need to practice, you need to learn what your equipment is, and you need to learn to work with your leadership, because at the end of the day, they're going to save lives. I think if you watch city council meetings over the last 4 years, you'll see that I know the issues. I put the 20 to 25 hours a week in to make sure that when I come to council, I can speak from an intelligent and an experienced viewpoint. I ask you to take a look at the meetings if you haven't voted yet. Check out the behavior of the current city council. When you do so, I hope you'll agree with me that I've got what it takes to continue another 4 years on council. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Tamara Wallace, and you saved the best for last. And I don't mean me, I mean you. Police and fire and nursing. I've been saying police, fire, and roads for the last 2 years. You are what this city was created for, police, fire, and roads. And I think that it is a good thing that all of these candidates up here have said that as well this time around. I was called backwards and too basic 2 years ago when I ran, and I'm glad that everyone has come around this time, so it's very nice. I have lived here 20 years. I've raised 5 children here. I'm continuing. I have a little 12-year-old running around in here, a little blondie. We are committed to this community. We are committed to you. And I hope that you find the way to vote for me on November 6th.
Are we having a mic issue there? Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll take care of that. Yeah, I'll grab that from you. All right.
Test.
Well, see these cards raised up when you have 30 seconds left, and then 15 seconds left of your 90 seconds for the question. Thank you. Okay.
Don't make rain.
Yeah.
It's my bad hands. Bruce Grego. Can you hear me okay?
Check, check. Okay. First question from the police is, virtually every police publication has reported on significant challenges to recruiting and retention. With increasing competition for a limited number of police officers, some cities have increased salary and benefits, causing more stress for cities which don't keep pace with these increases. Add to this anti-police sentiment expressed in the press and political circles. Given these financial and societal pressures on the profession, what will you do to help?
I have a grandson that is in Douglas County. Oh, I'm sorry. I have a grandson that's working with the Douglas County Sheriff's Department. He's 18, and he's participating in the programs they have. And I believe he'll one day become a police officer, and I've known some other young men that have done the same. And I think we need to reach out to that group of people for the next generation of police officers. We are in financial stress. We need to look at how do we sustain commitments that we have made to public employees against the budget? How do we get our roads fixed and solve other problems? I think we need to engage all the interested parties and try to find mutually acceptable solutions. Which way do I know?
Same one. Virtually every police publication has reported on significant challenges to recruiting and retention. With increasing competition for a limited number of police officers, some cities have increased salary benefits, causing even more stress for cities which don't keep pace with these increases. Add to this anti-police sentiment expressed in the press and political circles, and given these financial and societal pressures on the profession, what will you do to help?
I had a chance recently to speak with Police Chief Mueller about this. When I was going to high school up here back in the late 80s, we had a class. It was an elective class, and I took it. It was police science. And we spoke about this. It was taught by a retired police officer. And he said, hey, that's a good idea. You know, we can maybe get this going again. In this class, there was about 25 kids, about 25 of us. And out of that 25, 15 of them went on to become police officers. Because you've learned what it's like. You know, you need to get that early education started with the children, you know, with the youth. And you'll kind of evaporate that feeling that they have against police officers. And I don't know, I can't speak exactly where that's coming from, but I do feel it. I know there's not as much respect as there should be for the police, but I feel education like this goes a long way. And if we educate the youth, and we can go from there, and they will go on to become police officers. And hopefully they'll stay in their hometown, which is South Lake Tahoe for most of them.
Thanks. Yeah, so I think it's a complicated issue. I don't think the city of South Lake Tahoe is ever going to be able to compete with cities for paying the highest wages. It's not just the police department, it's not just city staff, it's businesses, it's all the casinos, it's the hotels, it's all the restaurants. So really it's two things. One, attracting the right type of officer and the right type of recruits that want to live in Tahoe for Tahoe. They are outdoor oriented, they want to be here. I'm sure I'm like all of you in this room. We make sacrifices to live in Tahoe because that's where we want to live. The other part of it is housing. It doesn't matter how competitive of wages you're offering if the housing stock and the housing supply isn't available. There's issues that I've heard of people getting offered $100,000 positions in Tahoe and they're still not able to find the sufficient housing for them to even fill that position. So really it's about addressing the housing issues, making sure there's places for officers or any employees to live in Tahoe, and then attracting the right type of people that want to live in the outdoors and this beautiful lake.
I can't argue with what Devin just said. Obviously, finding people that have an affinity for the mountain life is very important, and getting those individuals here will help as far as perhaps the pay scale. The second thing is housing for sure, so I won't beat that up. I think the first thing I'd like to do is sit down with the head of the police union and finance department and go through the budget. I want the police department to see for themselves that there's not the type of money in the budget required to get better equipment, get better training, and to increase salaries to be more competitive with other cities. After we go through that exercise, and perhaps we can identify more money, although we've looked pretty hard at it, I don't know where it is. I think I would then like their support to go out to the public and say, look, whether it's police or whether it's fire, the money's just not in the budget. If we want the type of protection for our citizens, we're going to need to find long-term additional funding. And that then leads to going to the voters and asking them to support those efforts. So that's the way I would tackle it.
I actually agree with a lot of what has been said. I think that getting all of the stakeholders to the table and talking about the issues, I believe that when a city makes a promise, they should keep a promise. And if they fail to budget for that promise, that's their responsibility. And I know that that's happened a lot with our city. I think that trying to hire police officers, especially in fire department personnel, has been difficult because of the challenges that it takes to live here. But pursuing that avenue of selling our quality of life is an avenue that we can take. We need to solve the issues of housing here, though, in order for that to work. And I know there is a competition for fewer officers, and there's a competition with regards to the fire department as well. I know they recently had a problem just getting a few people to show up for testing. As far as the anti-police sentiment, I have never understood that. I guess it's just the way I was raised or the way that I've raised my children. It's something that is terribly troublesome, and that goes to possibly education, school resource officers. Having a really great school resource officer who is engaging with our children, that can go a long way towards changing the minds of those kids, and I think that that's a really important thing.
So for, okay, there we are. So, as far as for recruiting, I think we live in a very unique place, and I think, I was actually talking to Chief Euler about this morning. I think that there's a lot of advantages that I can see.
Send this one down.
Okay, sorry.
Testing.
Okay, sorry about so yeah, as far as recruiting officers here, I think that, Tahoe is a unique place, and I think we need to be able to add benefits to the job that are, enable these officers to take part in what we offer here. I think we need to talk to Vail Resorts and ensure every officer in the department has a ski pass along with their family. That's not too much to ask of a resort to provide our public safety officers and first responders with benefits. And I don't think that there's any reason that they shouldn't see the benefits in doing those things as well. And that spreads across more than just Vail Resorts. I think that there's many people throughout the community that would love to, participate in giving back to the police and to the fire. And we've got to, as city leaders, really put their feet to the fire and make them do that. And I think that's one thing that we can do to try to add to the benefits, because it's very true that our budgets are at a point that we don't have a whole lot on our end to give out of the budget, but we can embrace the community and really try to get our community involved in giving back to the first responders. And I think you see that throughout other communities in the world, and it's not uncommon. So I think we need to really embrace the big operators in our town and small businesses as well.
Unfortunately, not everybody here must have been reading my notes, I don't know. But the hardest thing is going to be changing the culture. I cannot believe what has happened in my generation, of the disrespect we have for people who save our lives. you call in the middle of the night, someone's breaking into your house, they're willing to come in with a gun and put them between you and a perpetrator, and pull over a car in the middle of the night not knowing who's there. There's no amount of money I think I could do that, and I would have total respect for people willing to do that. So changing the cultures, we just have to do it our own little community at a time. And I think the school resource officer is a great resource, redundant. I really think that we have to start young to let people know that these police officers are our protectors and our friends, and not somebody to be feared or distrust. We've always been at a competitive disadvantage with the larger cities regarding pay, but we always used to hope that the quality of life up here would offset that. But with the housing costs and the town culture has changed into a larger city, the quality of life is not as big as attraction. But I do think retention is going to be helped by promoting from within, and I think with the fire department too. We need to know, people coming in know that they have room to advance, maybe the police chief, and raises for continuing education. And if need be, if we go to the public, if we can't find the revenues now, safety tax, sales tax, whatever it may be, we need to be able to pay these people enough money to keep them here. They save our lives, and we need to constantly recognize that.
When this question came out, I wrote down just a list of words, and many of them have been said, but I think it's culture, housing, benefits, pay, appreciation. So all those things I think are important. Another thing, I noticed Barton Hospital has done a good job of recruiting back some of the homegrown doctors. You'll see a lot of those doctors, those younger doctors that were born and raised here. And it goes with the lifestyle, really bringing back some of those that really want to live in the mountain lifestyle. I want to say out loud that I have such great appreciation for our police department. I got to do a ride-along just a few weeks ago. That was a pretty gruesome and intense ride-along, and the professionalism and the appreciation that I think our city has for our police might be an anomaly to what we see in the nation. And I hope that our police feel that way. Professional at every single level. I'm not going to take Tom Davis's thunder on this, but he is one of the best at making sure we appreciate our police.
Thank you, Wendy. There is no anti-police settlement in my family, I'll tell you that right now. I've ridden along with our police department numerous times. Folks, they're there 24/7. They're there at Thanksgiving. Same with our nurses, same with our fire department. Well, we're having family dinner. They're out there. They're at 2 o'clock this morning, they're there. I tell those people that are anti-police, say you call 911, your house is getting robbed. Nobody shows up. How's that going to work out for you? That's when you want to see the police. So they're a very important part of our community. The first 2 departments in the history of government in the United States were police and fire. Those are the 2 biggest needs in the Wild West days. So critical to our community. I found out the other day we were down 6 officers, by the way, and I'm in favor of overstaffing. We need to hire more than we need. I guess we've got 3 out on sick leave from a fight. You're one. Yeah. So we probably need to staff a little more, and same thing in the fire department we need, so we have adequate staffing on the street. So it's critical we do that. How we do that? Safety tax? I'm willing to take a look at that, but I got to tell you, they're always there for us. They're there 24/7, and I do appreciate them. And I tell those people that are anti-police, yeah, dial 911, see what happens. Nobody shows up. You'll become a believer real fast. Thank you.
Okay, second question, we're going to start with Patrick Jarrett. And the second question is, while about 70% of the cities in California has imposed local bans on commercial marijuana, South Lake Tahoe appears to be moving quickly toward being one of the most marijuana-friendly communities in the state. Do you believe the current city council is handling marijuana correctly? Why or why not?
I do not believe that the current city council is handling this correctly. This should have been handled a long time ago. And the city should have been collecting tax off of this a long time ago. I understand these regulations take time, but this was passed in 2016 and became law in California January 1st, 2018, to give everybody that time to get everything in order and get it straight. They had 2 years since it was passed. So I think it was maybe not handled incorrectly, just not handled as rapidly as it should have been. Then we could have that tax money and we can maybe fix our roads and hire more police and fire. It's just comes down to cannabis is here. And how we deal with it now, that's what's gonna make the difference. Are we gonna just drive it back underground, or are we gonna make some money off it? I say the latter. Thank you.
So I was one of the members of the city's Citizen Cannabis Subcommittee that helped draft recommendations that went to the city council. I would argue that the city council, in the year and a half that they went through that process to reach an ordinance, have not created the most lenient laws around cannabis in the entire state. There's much more lenient cities, especially in Mendocino and the North Coast. I think the rules and regulations that were put in place and the recommendations our group made took public health and safety and the community in really high regard, and one of the primary reasons why we developed the rules we did. It was a slow process, it was thought out, it was methodical, and again, like Patrick said, it's here, we know it's here, people are selling it, people are using it. Why not tax it, regulate it, bring it out of the dark, and be able to get some tax revenue? Talking about funding for police, that's tax dollars we could have to fund the police department, to do the enforcement, to fund school safety resource officers at the schools, to take on that. But again, I don't think we're the most lenient, but we need to move forward, and really the issue is not with cannabis as a drug, but the other drugs that are running rampant in the community, like heroin, meth, and the other nasty stuff.
Test. Prop 64 passed within the city limits by a vote of 64%. We need to remember that. 64% of the citizens wanted cannabis legalized. The second thing we need to remember is that the city council, as a group, decided they wanted to take it slow. Very, very slow. As a result of that, there was numerous community meetings, workshops, work groups, subcommittees. But the fact of the matter is, we did pass an ordinance that would have gone into effect in September. As many of you know, there was then a referendum which suspended the ballot measure. We currently have a revised ballot measure that will be coming forward at the next city council meeting after it goes through the planning commission. As far as tax revenue, we don't really know. I could tell you what I've learned in Colorado, and I could tell you on the back of the envelope, I think we'll see $1.5 million in revenue, but it's not a guaranteed revenue source. We also have to remember that there's going to be serious expenses related to this. We worked very closely with Chief Euler to come up with a good policy. We worked very closely with Chief Meston to come up with a safe operational policy. And these things take time, but they're also going to cost money. So after the $1.5 million is netted out, I'm not sure if we're going to have $700,000 or $300,000. So it's nice to say we can pay for our roads, but I don't think we're going to see that kind of money there to be able to do that. The main thing is to have a good, safe policy, take our time and roll it out, see if it's effective, and then adjust as we go forward.
Can you repeat the first part of the question again, please?
Sure.
While about 70% of the cities in California has imposed local bans on commercial marijuana, South Lake Tahoe appears to be moving quickly toward being one of the most marijuana-friendly communities in the state. Do you believe the current city council is handling marijuana correctly? Why or why not?
I have attended since Prop 64 passed, I've attended every single council meeting. I've been in almost all of these discussions, and as everyone here knows, it's not my absolute favorite subject. I am personally not for recreational marijuana, but I see it as a legal business in the state of California, and so therefore I support legal business in the state of California. I have appreciated that the council has gone slow, and that they've tried to do their due diligence, and that they have done what they felt was necessary to protect the community. I like that they have tried to protect the children and impose larger circumference around schools and daycares and things like that. That was very important to me. I'm a mother of 5, and that is very important. I think that the changes that are being presented that are happening because of the referendum are somewhat being not explained properly. I think that the 15 licenses is not being explained properly. I don't think that that's quite what's happening. And I think that the council has done a pretty good job at this. So I support legal business in the state of California, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I think that basically the council, in my opinion, the main failure of the council was that they did not include any of the industry members that are from the South Lake Tahoe area. And to me, I think that that is a serious failure, and I think that's why we ended up where we're at and why we don't have recreational cannabis at this point. The fact is the council reached out to consultants to consult with the city attorney and to consult with the Citizens Advisory Group that explicitly couldn't have anybody from the industry. And I think that that is why we are where we are. However, that being said, I think the council did a great deal of work in the areas of public safety and ensuring that public safety was thought out and done well. And I agree with the high majority of those things. We've now come past, and it's kind of not worth talking about the past, but now we are where we are, and I think that we're going to end up in a good place. I think the fact is we've had a dispensary here in town for 10 years. We are not moving into what the 70% that we're talking about of municipalities that have created a ban. The majority of them have never had a licensed dispensary. We are unique in the ways we were one of the first municipalities to license a dispensary back in 2011 when we did that. So I think moving forward, we are moving in a good direction. I think that the fact the referendum came through and we're not going to have an auction for the licenses is going to allow this to help the local economy. I think that the 3 officers that can be provided by the revenue generated should go to SRO officers and not officers directly enforcing cannabis, because we have a bureau on the state level to do that.
Well, I hadn't heard that we were going to be the most friendly in the state, but I hope it will be known as the best controlled and the most professional. My biggest issue, and when Cody and 2 other medicinal marijuanas opened up, we allowed 3. And the biggest problem I have is now, as then, is marijuana is a controlled substance. It's more controlled than cocaine. It's controlled to the point where anybody doing business can't usually do business with banks because they're federally insured. So I was personally involved with closing 2 of them down. Gino, you may remember, and Matt. They were laundering money. They were caught with cash. They complained, I'm just doing this as a cooperative. Cody has kept his nose clean, and hopefully, eventually this will be a business that can be regulated and taxes can be collected. Right now, gangs are still involved with pot. Hopefully this will disappear. Right now, we have a heroin problem in this town. We have a meth problem in this town. By putting marijuana where it belongs in a recreational controlled taxable situation, they do business with banks, will help separate the drugs that are rampant with our community. Kids are doing heroin in high school. That has to be dealt with. Recreational marijuana just needs to be controlled, professional, and conducted in business like any other business in town.
Well, I'm with Tammy. Of all the topics that I've had for the last 4 years, cannabis has been my least favorite. It goes kind of to the bigger question of who you want sitting at your council, because what this council did do is we took responsibility. We put a moratorium on the topic for a while because we really had a high educational level of learning about cannabis, learning about what an ordinance would take. hearing from everyone in our community, you know, just learning about the topic. We took our time, we were slow, we really did try to take into effect everything about our city, where to zone, where not to zone, how this would affect children, how our business would be. We're still taking it slow, and I agree with Tammy. It looks like changes in our ordinance, which came as a result of the referendum, look a little greater than they really are. It was a different way of bringing it out. We had to show some substantive changes for our ordinance to go through. I think as a council member, you do, and I agree with Mr. Sass, we had a very high overwhelming amount that were in favor of legal cannabis. We took that seriously as your council and are trying to work it so it can be the best, the most professional, the best in working with our entire community. So again, I would defend the council and especially the committee on working this.
We're not moving fast, we're moving about as fast as molasses in January. You know, we started this process last October. We handpicked 20 people from a community. Brooke Lane and I were part of that subcommittee. We had 38 hours of meetings with the community. We had healthcare folks, we had Girls and Boys Club. We wanted a cross-section. We did not want those folks in the marijuana business to be on the committee because we didn't want them to drive the discussion. We wanted the community to drive the discussion and come up with the rules and regulations. Was it a perfect process? No. But we felt it was a good cross-section of this community to do it that way. As we mentioned earlier, 64% of you voters wanted legalized recreational marijuana. That's a mandate. So we took that and went down that path and did that road. By the way, I said at the very beginning, when we had our first committee meeting, it's not about the money, it's about doing it right the first time. The money will follow. So I wasn't excited to say we're going to do it just to get the tax dollars due, get anything on the books, and go from there. Also, I think it's really important, I'm really concerned about the long-term health effects. We don't know what effects are going to be on our youth in the next 10, 15 years. We don't even have a method to test for DUI. My son tells me he has a heck of a time trying to figure out driving under the influence to be able to hold up in court. And CHP is working on that now with a local or university down in Sacramento. A lot of unanswered questions. So I'm really concerned about the long-term health effects, but we're going to do it and do it right.
When I was on the council between 2008 and 12, I was involved in the first subcommittee in developing the regulations regarding medical uses of marijuana. And we were in the forefront of creating a system where we regulated it. You know, we're a democracy, and when we have citizens telling us that they want to go a certain direction, they have initiatives and things, we respect those opinions. And so we're trying to regulate this industry, trying to control it, trying to keep it away from children. Those need to be the objectives. And is the council going fast enough or not? You know, there's been a lot of controversies over what has been proposed. We've had the referendum, and but it's a difficult area to address. But I think we have no choice but to address it. Otherwise, it'll just go out, get out of control.
All right, this is a chance for follow-up. If you want to just raise your hand if you wanted to do any follow-ups on the two questions. You got Cody. Anyone else? Bruce? Anyone else want to follow up? Chance? Okay, we'll start with Cody. You have 30 seconds.
So, yeah, my only follow-up is that, you know, January 1st of 2018, the council very well could have allowed, just as many other cities in California did, the sales of cannabis to happen in the existing use dispensary. And I think that's been a big question to all sorts of people across the board, is why the rest of California moved forward, yet South Lake Tahoe sat here and did nothing. We allowed a huge amount of money to go to Nevada, and that's tax revenue that we could have received. I offered to all the council members that we would give all of our proceeds that were additional to nonprofits in town. So I do think it was very irresponsible the council did not move forward January 1st of this year.
just follow up on the first response I gave. You know, the image of the police and the criticism, some which is very unfair, I think stems in part from the judicial system. How the courts seem to be somewhat disconnected from what the police have to do, and that we need to engage not only law enforcement, but the people that part of the judicial system to see if we can change that image. I do civil law, I'm not a criminal law attorney, but I've seen enough of it, and maybe that's a way of addressing some of these image issues.
Also, I had proposed a path back in this ordinance, which didn't get any traction. A path back is three areas to look at. One, how many healthcare issues we have with Barton ER. Two was how many youth are using marijuana in our community. And third, those driving under the influence. And if in fact we saw a huge increase in those three areas, we'd go back to the drawing board, look at some more educational programs that the marijuana folks would pay for.
Good evening, candidates. The local RNs unionized last November with the California Nurses Association and are currently in contract negotiations to increase patient safety, better health benefits, job security, and to attract and retain RNs in our community. Why should healthcare workers support you as a candidate?
Test. Well, the first reason that healthcare workers should support me is because I've had 10 orthopedic surgeries at Barton Hospital. And as long as I continue to ski and mountain bike and hike, there's a good chance I'll be back again. Now, I think one of the reasons why healthcare people need to support specific candidates is their knowledge and their experience with the different agencies in town that can affect things like housing. There is no magic silver bullet for housing. It's going to be a long, drawn-out process. One thing I've learned through my 3 years on the TRPA is that the TRPA governing board is controlled by people that don't live here in the Tahoe Basin. Their compassion for the issues that we face as locals really is secondary to protecting the lake. I believe there's a balance. And in order to solve the housing problem, one of the things that we need to do is increase density so that developers will come in and projects will pencil out. Whether that's increasing height where you're not impacting the scenic corridor, whether it's lifting requirements of parking on new developments, or whether it's, allowing granny units in the back of private homeowner lots, those are ways to start to tackle the housing problem. And I think that's a lot of what the city can do with regard to making it a more affordable place and to attract and keep healthcare workers.
That was what I was gonna say. Good job, Austin. I have 5 kids. One of them has had 10 surgeries, and most of them were at Barton. And my husband just recently had a humongous surgery at Barton. And so we love the nurses at Barton. They are amazing. Most of them went to school with our kids. And I feel so blessed to live in what is really a small community that has really a truly world-class healthcare facility. And I think the biggest issue is what Austin just said. We can do what we can to help with housing. And I sit on a subcommittee with Wendy and Austin with Tahoe Prosperity Center, and we're working on that. The specific issue that we're dealing with is policy, trying to change the policies of the agencies, changing the way that they look at these developments so that they can pencil out for the developers. Not just bringing affordable, but workforce and attainable housing. And just housing, more housing to our community is going to make a huge difference. So that's what we as city council can do, and it's something that I believe in, and it's something that I have worked on for many years here in the community, so we love you nurses. Our family really loves you.
Yeah, similar experience. My mother actually was in town about 3 years ago and got incredibly sick with a meningitis, and she was there at Barton for about a week and a half, and it was a really great experience because they live in Texas in large hospitals, and so I have a great care for Barton altogether. I've been a donor to the Barton Foundation in years where we were financially doing better than we are today, more than all 4 casinos combined. The Tahoe Wellness Gate, the Barton Auxiliary, and the Barton Foundation will continue to support Barton in that level forever. I've also worked hand in hand with doctors at Barton for helping them in understanding cannabis, and I feel committed to continuing that. What I think we can do as council members, and why you should vote for me, is because I think we can work with Barton and the board of Barton to learn how to purchase deed restrictions that are only able to be leased to nurses and doctors in our community. That's a major thing that we need to do with housing, and working with the Barton board to say, look, we need to purchase these deed restrictions. It either has to be the owner that lives in the house himself, or if he's going to lease it for income, it has to be leased to a nurse or a doctor or somebody that works for Barton. We can do the same thing for police and fire. And us as city leaders need to be working directly with the Barton board members and with Barton to make that happen. And we can also provide incentives as the city to help have those type of developments happen when they have those deed restrictions in place. So those are things that I would continue to work for.
I was fortunate to live up here before we had a hospital. My parents were involved with creating the hospital. I have served on the board of directors of Barton Hospital for 12 years. I understand the value of nurses. And with the latest regulations now, reimbursements to hospitals are based on performance and quality care. So a good nurse not only will benefit patient care, but will benefit the bottom line of the hospital. Our quality, Barton's quality ratings have come back high. I think that it's based on a culture there. I was involved early on when the nurses started to possibly unionize. I don't know how far that's gone, but I do know that the nurses are the ones with the hands-on, the ones that are helping us get our reimbursements back from Medicare and Medi-Cal. And I'm so glad we have a hospital in this town. I'm so glad we have such great physicians and great nurses. We're very fortunate in a small town to have such a quality hospital. We can take care of almost any injury, any illness. We have a trauma center. And if we can't do it quickly down to rehab, we're fortunate. Thank everybody.
So I think you should support me because I actually really understand the strength and the importance of the California Nurses Union. My daughter is a nurse with Kaiser in San Rafael, and my daughter-in-law is a nurse with UCSF. They both are strong members of the union. I want to tell you very quickly my daughter's experience. She went from Novato, which is a community hospital, kind of like Barton, and got hired by Kaiser. The day before she was starting, she got a call saying, oh, well, we're changing your shift, and, you're going to be doing such and such. And she had a really nice, she has little kids, and she had a 7:15 to 3:45 shift or whatever it was. She called her father and her mother in a panic and said, I can't believe this is happening. We right away said, you need to call your union. You're now part of a union. Within a week, her union supported her. Her union said, this is your contract. This is what you were hired for. The hospital came forward and ended up apologizing to her. I know that your job is a very important job, and it's a job with a strong union. And from a personal point of view, that union helped my daughter not to be pushed around and manipulated in her job. So I do understand the importance of the nurses union.
How many of you in this room have used Barton Health Care Services? I've used it so much they sent me 2 calendars one year. I told you earlier, my daughter-in-law is a surgical nurse at Barton. I've been in there a couple of times. Outstanding, stellar service from our nurses and our doctors. I was so impressed, and For insurance purposes, I sent the nurses station some flowers, just in case I came back and said, remember my name. But we're very fortunate in this small town to have the orthopedic surgeons, the orthopedic center of excellence, and Barton Hospital in our community. Very few communities of this size have that. So we need to support that as a community. I support it. My company donates every year to the Barton Foundation. We're proud of that. And other people donate to it. You have a doctor there, Marissa Muscat, who's involved with a warming room outside of her job. That's the kind of set staff we have there, and the nurses that we have and doctors we have there. And I'm proud of this hospital, and I'm proud to be part of this community as part of the hospital. Thank you.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. The local Ryans unionized last November with the California Nurses Association and are currently in contract negotiations to increase patient safety, better health benefits, job security, and to attract and retain experienced RNs in our community. Why should healthcare workers support you as a candidate?
Well, when the nurses were picketing in front of Barton, when they were having out petitions and brochures, I supported their efforts. Housing is so important. And making sure that our neighborhoods are being used for neighborhoods and not commercial purposes. The whole issue with this Measure T is part of that. It's not enough just to have housing for doctors and nurses, but we need to have housing for the middle class, for the people that work here, so that they can use the services that Barton and the school districts and other public entities offer. It's all connected. So housing is a really important factor, and solving that problem is probably a priority in trying to address all these concerns. From my perspective, we should go to the Conservancy and try to free up developable lots, granny flats. Again, trying to insist that neighborhoods are being used for living and not commercialization. Those are the steps. That's all connected.
Why should you vote for me? Because I'm, much like most of the other candidates up here, we've been customers of Barton Memorial Hospital through the years. My son was born there in 2002. The care that I got from the nurses was phenomenal. And that was 16 years ago. And it's done nothing but improve since then. Now they're unionized. And I fully stand behind that. The nurses, my sister-in-law is a nurse. Not in this country, but she goes through some of the same struggles. My sister retired from the state of California. She worked for the developmental center down in Napa Valley. I understand what these nurses go through. And I used to hear it from my sister, and I still hear it from my sister-in-law occasionally, of their struggles on a daily basis. And yeah, housing is one of the big struggles that nurses have to deal with. Everybody in Tahoe seems to be dealing with this problem on one level or another. And we need to find some solutions. And I think Cody and Devin have some really good ideas. But we need to get this ball rolling. We need to roll out some of these ideas and find some solutions to these housing problems. And that will help not just the nurses, but the police and the fire. Thank you.
In keeping with the trend, I too have been to Barton Memorial Hospital. I think my baby feet print are somewhere in the halls of the hospital. But the reason, I mean, all those are great reasons to support healthcare, but I think the biggest reason why the health workers should support me is the same reason I'm asking all community members to support me.
Obviously, being on the council, one would hope that the council would interact and avoid those kind of situations. And we don't want to see this too often. But unions are part of our society, and it's part of our democracy, and sometimes it leads to that.
I don't see this as necessarily being a role of the city council to intervene or interfere in any way between the employer and the union. But I do think that the city council individually, we can all stand behind and support the nurses. and get behind what they're arguing about, and we can then come to a conclusion and come to the employer and say, look, you need to change this. This is not good for the community as a whole. We need to take care of our nurses, because if you think about it, you see nurses more often than you see doctors when you're in the hospital. Nurses are the oil for the whole machine. Without the nurses, it really doesn't work. So we need to take care of them and show support any way we can. But it's not the job of the city council to get involved in employee relations.
Yeah, so obviously I would be 100% behind the nurses if the situation ever got that tense, but in context of being a city council member, it's what role can we play to stop it from getting to that point? And directly the role that city council can play is housing. We need to have more housing, and we need to have housing not just for the nurses, but the entire community. And the role we play in that is removing the barriers and making it pencil out for developers. Where's that specifically talking about the hospital? The city council with their Tahoe Valley area plan allowed Barton to expand their healthcare district, increase density. They had incentives for housing for Barton employees to be able to work near Barton, walk to Barton. There's that little wedge right there as you're driving down the street across from under the magic pine tree, where it's just sitting vacant. Why wouldn't that be a great place for housing? How can, as a council member, I facilitate discussions to create nearby housing for nurses, for staff, so they are able to live, work, and play in Tahoe, and it doesn't get to the point where there's tensions, but if there is, I'm behind the nurses.
Throughout my career, I've always prided myself on looking at both sides of every single issue and fully understanding what one side is looking at and what the other side is looking at. We used to say in sales and marketing, let me understand your pain and let me come up with a cure. If invited by Barton and by the union, I would be happy to sit down with both sides and listen to where both sides are coming from to try to facilitate a compromise so that we can get this over with and move forward. If through those discussions I came to the conclusion that senior management at Barton was being unreasonable, yes, I would be out in the lines with you.
I actually was on the planning commission and helped approve and work on the Tahoe Valley area plan that included Barton and those mixed-use housing units and all of that. As far as how would I show my support, I would do it in the way that I show my support for anyone who needs help. I would ask you what you need me to do, because as Wendy and others have said, I'm not certain how a city council person would have a role in that situation, but as a human being, when I see someone who needs help, I try to help them, and I would ask you what you need me to do to help you.
So yeah, I too, as a citizen or a city council member, would join you in those strikes, because I think the nurses and the hospital is one of the most important services in town. And if it's reached to a level of a strike, I have trust in your union that that's a real thing, and I would absolutely join any of you, regardless if I'm elected to city council. I think what we can do as city council members is really is involved in housing. As Devin has pointed out, it is the core issue of what's making it very difficult to exist here for all of us. And we have to engage Barton and do what we can as the city. Barton has a lot more money than we do and a lot more ability to be real. We went to this economic summit that the Prosperity Center put together, and we were talking, a guy from Vail was put on a great presentation of what they've done. But what they've been able to do is with money. And the bottom line is Barton has the money. But we have the ability to permit the uses, we have the ability to change the barriers to development, to allow these things to happen. And that's what we've got to do, is get involved with Barton to let them know that yes, we will do this. We will make sure our TRPA representative works to make sure these things happen. This is critical that we have the housing. And I believe that deed restrictions are a real answer for this, for both police, fire, and the nurses, that we get deed restrictions on residential parcels that mandate if the owner of the property doesn't live there and they want to rent that, it goes to a nurse, it goes to a police officer, it goes to a fireman. If we were able to get multiples of those, we would really clear the housing issue for the first responders.
First, I also want to recognize that just as paramedics act as almost ER docs in the field. Our nurses act like PAs and almost primary physicians. That's the way the industry's going. The nurses' responsibilities has risen greatly. I must admit, I am not involved in the negotiations. I don't know the ins and outs. But if the nurses union and the nurses in general wanted some help, what we really need to do is let the community know what the issues are. And what we can as council members and community leaders, we can help lobby on your behalf. There's a lot of power of the elected officials and the business community that supports us. Your grievances need to be made public, and we need to get lobbying efforts to do it. I'm not sure if it's housing, pay, or working conditions. If we knew more facts about it, I know I personally would help lobby on your behalf. We just need to know what your issues are. So excuse me for not being educated enough for what is causing it, but what I hate to see is strikes done by people, whether it's police officers or firemen or nurses that are in the business of saving people's lives. We need to avoid a strike at all costs because the consequences can be so dire.
Are there any follow-ups? Wendy, anyone else with follow-up?
I have a follow-up because it's hard when you're the first person. You talk and then you hear other people talk. And what I wanted to say was I had a coffee and conversation, one of the mayor's coffees and conversations, and the nurses came. And there were about 25 nurses that came. They came with their children. And I think one of the things that we can do, and it kind of follows along what some of these people said, we can be good listeners and we can advocate. And so we also are leaders that talk to leaders. And so I wanted to let you know that that is a role that I think all council members are willing to take on.
Tom. The standards of cover document cited many shortfalls within the fire department. Please list your top concerns regarding the fire department, including your priorities for Station 2. What would you do to realize those if elected?
First of all, it's, my priorities are equipment and personnel and well-paid personnel. Same thing as I said with the police department. We need to look at a way to overstaff our fire department, so when there's sick calls out or vacations or injuries, we have enough firemen on duty 24/7. By the way, missing link out of this we haven't talked about is our ambulance service, and we'll get into that in Station 2 in a second. Ambulance service, I'm on the JPA along with Brooke Lane. That's a very critical part of our delivery system in our healthcare. And I've been a big advocate of the ambulance. Originally, as you know, it was fire-based ambulance service. And that's why Station 2 was used. But after a while, our firemen were going on IFTs, interfacility transfers, which have increased tremendously over the years, taking them out of the area for $4 or $5 a day. Some are all the way down to San Francisco. So that's why we went away from that and didn't have the JPA staff it with their staffing. As far as Station 2 is concerned, we already talked about it. Council made a commitment to fund Station 2 next year. It's about $1.5 million. In the next budget, we'll do that. The other question is, where are we going to put our ambulance? Our community is aging. Our ambulance service, I think we have about 3,000 calls, and much of that is ambulance services. So we've got to take a hard look where we're going to base that ambulance, besides moving back into Station 2, which I totally hard support. Thank you.
I think Tom covered a lot of the issues, but I also have the belief that we need to support fire and police, give them the equipment and the support needed to keep them safe and to keep our community safe.
As far as priorities are concerned, definitely equipment and staffing are the top two priorities. And we need to find a way to, once we get that staff, we need to retain that staff. And we need to, again, go back on the housing. You know, my brother was a firefighter with Lodi Fire Department. And that's a sort of a similar size town. They had 3 fire stations. We had 3 fire stations. We're gonna have 3 again, but not until November next year. When the JTA runs out, We'll have to figure out what to do with those ambulances. Maybe we could just station the ambulances at the firehouses. We'll have to look at and see what kind of solutions we can come up with. We have a year to figure these things out. But we need, the fire department needs personnel and they need equipment. And we need to get the personnel in there, because if we're gonna open Station 2, do we have enough firefighters? I don't think we do currently.
Yeah, to be repetitive, resources, personnel, Station 2, yay. But really the question of what would you do to realize those if elected? If elected to council, I'd put my money where my mouth is and be held accountable for when we're talking in those budget meetings and we're making those decisions, voting for fire safety and our community and really stepping up with that. My biggest fear, at least related to fire danger, is our forests and the dead trees we have building up and the built up fire danger and fire risk, and I really don't think, especially as a city is concerned, I don't think we're ready for that emergency or that disaster, so that would also be a priority of mine, is making sure we're prepared, God forbid, if there's another Angora or worse.
Well, first I want to thank Chief Meston and the fire department for putting together such a comprehensive standard of cover document. It was an eye-opener, to say the least. The biggest alarming fact for me was the response time. When Chief Meston stood in front of City Council and showed us how poor the response time would be compared to what other cities have, it was really an eye-opener. Obviously, we need to get Station 2 opened. We need to find the money within the current reserves if we have to, and I'm willing to dip into the reserves to make sure that we do that until we can go to the public and see if they'll be willing to pay for long-term fire staffing. And I'm going to be real blunt with you. The other big eye-opener from this whole process was the Fire Safe grant. We on City Council were never told about that grant over the last 4 years until a couple of months ago. And that is a crime. That should have been coming forward to us 3 years ago. It didn't. I can pledge to you this, that the new city manager will not bury stuff like that. We should have applied for that grant 3 years ago, and we wouldn't be in the mess we're in right now.
This is my favorite subject. I spent several hours last week with the fire department, and I have lots of really great ideas. First, I agree with Tom, overhiring, so that if we have issues like with you getting injured on the police force, if we have injuries on the fire department, we can fill those spaces with personnel that are already here. We need to open Station 2, and that SAFER grant pays 75% the first 2 years and 35% of the cost the third year, but we have to make a commitment to open that station for 10 years. So there's a budget thing. We own 2 really great pieces of property on Highway 50, and it's sometimes difficult to get those fire trucks out onto Highway 50 when we have traffic. We could move those stations off of Highway 50, sell that property, and build stations on property that we own. For instance, the school district owns a floating acre here at the college. If we did something with the school district to provide more technical opportunities for the school district, work something in with the Measure F funds, they want to build a training center here for their fire academy, we could do a partnership with the 3 different organizations, and we could have a fire station here at the college. These are just ideas. I would like to see us have 4 crews, 3 stations, and a ladder crew with our new ladder truck. The ladder truck isn't going to be here for 14 to 18 months, so we could have some extra time. There are a lot of things that we could do. We need a radio system. There's a lot of things.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I'm really excited about
Not
the fire
that I'm against the
department.
things you're saying, but.
So, yes, this issue was one of the first things that I really took on, and I met with Chief Metzen, and I was completely taken back by the reality of what has come to be since 2015. The fact that we closed Fire Station 2 At the same time, we raised other departments in the administrative side of the city is appalling to me, especially when you look at the numbers and the standards of cover. We were seeing around 1,800 calls in 2007. In 2017, we saw 3,800 calls. How three of these incumbents here made the decision that it would be wise to close a fire station with that amount of increase is unreal. It puts not even all of our lives at risk. It absolutely does put our lives at risk, but it also puts a real risk of our property values decreasing, our insurance values increasing. If we were to actually have a real level of emergency, at the standards that we currently sit at, we could have a real detrimental problem. And that's a failure of the current council. It was not about money because the money was there for development services, the money was there for the city attorney's office. Why wasn't it there for the police department is not right. The fact is, right now, the council, in my opinion, should have made the directive, given the money to open Fire Station 2. The hiring process and what it takes to get it open takes a lot of time. The other major issue is our communications. The fact that we have not allotted the money so that the communication system can be moved forward. We've talked about it. We've put up $500,000 towards it. We know that's not even a tenth. That's another thing that is completely unfounded, something that I will absolutely work towards immediately upon taking a seat.
First, a clarification, the calls have gone up, but most of them are medical calls, ambulance calls, and so that's where the ambulances are. I'm probably not going to make a lot of friends here, but I'm going to tell you the truth. Our budget right now is facing a structural deficit, starting next year and going up to $5 million a year in the future. I am all for public safety, but if we're going to increase our expenditure in public safety, we need to convene our council, have a long-range planning session to make sure that we know where the money's coming from. I went through 2010 when we had a downturn in our economy. We had to lay off 70 employees, including all of the county chiefs. It was horrible. We need to make sure that we have a funding source and we are able to hire these men and women and keep them there, because hiring, it's a $15 million commitment over 10 years, and we'll get maybe $2 million back in grants. The other $13 million comes out of our budget. So I'm hoping that we don't get in a cyclical issue where our budget's dependent. If Measure T passes, I hate to make this commitment of a city council that yes, we're going to put 9 men back in our 3rd fire station, not knowing what the outcome is. I'm glad we didn't make a commitment a year or two ago for the safety grant, because Measure T does pass. We've got some hard thinking to do. And public safety is always going to be at the top of our list, but if we're going to add revenues, we have to decide where we're going to cut expenditures. Some other departments, some other employees are going to have to be relieved if we're going to increase our spending given our current budget. And that's just a fact.
I think it's easy when you're not a city council member to say, this will be my priority, that will be my priority, everything will be my priority. While I agree that, that fire and police and public safety are our biggest priorities, I also agree with Hal that we do have a budget. The important thing, I think, for a council member and for this council is to represent you and also to represent the safety of the community. So it's important, what do we need to be safe? The response times were an eye-opener for me. They were an eye-opener. The council actually asked for the report. The report came back. As soon as the report came back, we said we need to look at this. I agree with Mr. Sass that Lake Valley has a safer grant. Tahoe Douglas has a safer grant. That this opportunity was not presented to the council. Now that it has been, but it is going to be, again, how do we pay for this for 10 years? I think you can reapply for the SAFER grant, which will be a great thing, but we do have a responsibility to you to have a budget that not only balances for fire, but it balances for everything else that we're responsible for.
Okay, as with, as with police, fire recruitment and retention for public safety has been challenging. Hirings have produced abysmal results in the number of qualified candidates. The city's recent pay study shows our fire department median in the basin with no retiree help. Our department becomes even less competitive when compared off the hill. Given this current state of recruitment, what will you do to help the fire department?
I do support appropriate raises in our fire and police department. And like I said before, I support internal recruitment, internal advancement. I feel I've heard these are some of the battalion chiefs and some of our captains. If they don't feel they have an opportunity to go any higher, they're going to go elsewhere, because not only do you want to be a fireman good to pay, but you want to advance your career. And all too often we've been hiring our chiefs out of the area. I think we really need to make sure that the people who are coming here, devoting their time here, that they know that there is a room for advancement. All other things given, I do support making sure that our pay is competitive. That's a little different than hiring 9 employees and then burdening that. I'd rather pay the men we have, and men and women we have here better and keep them here than advance and add another 10 employees on here that we may or may not be able to afford in the future. So I'd like to reward the people that are staying here at a better rate and give them the perks that are necessary to keep them here, because we need, longevity is the most important thing. In my business, the longer employees with me, the more valuable they are. And we need to recognize that.
Recruiting for public service for government officials has become incredibly competitive in California. In every area, when we were hiring for our city attorney, hiring for our city manager, we heard over and over again from our consultant that competing with the Silicon Valley, the kind of wealth that is there, the salaries that they're able to give their employees, makes it very difficult for smaller communities. So I think as a council, one of the things we can continue to negotiate, we can continue to listen, we can continue to be as open as possible. But I think this is an issue probably that's going to continue in some respects because of the economy of the state of California.
The city right now embarked on a compensation study, and it's going to be eye-opening to our community of what we're paying, particularly our public service. By the way, just a sidebar, Station 1 was built with redevelopment funds. A lot of people don't know that. And redevelopment had 20% set aside for affordable housing. Unfortunately, the governor disbanded redevelopment agencies. We built over almost 500 units in town with that 20% set aside with deep restricted developers. So the compensation study will set some standards for this. I've approved every contract that's come before me over the years that you negotiate with the city. By the way, I think you're going to like our new, and you already seen it, Scott, our new health care that's going to roll out on January 1st. It's going to be much better than the one you have now. So we are making some improvements. Health care is crazy. Some people were criticized years ago, why did we give health care for life? Well, it was $250 a month. That was a great benefit. Now it's up to $2,200 a month, I think, per family. So it's really costly for cities to do that. So I think you really like the new health care. You've seen it. And I think the bargaining units have approved it. And like I said, I approved every contract that's ever come across the city council's desk, and I'm proud to do that. Thank you.
You know, we have to remain competitive, and we have to look at these issues on a case-to-case basis. If we want to foreclose anything, we have to look at what we can do, and we have to make sure that we have enough of people to protect us from fires as well as crime, and I'm committed to do that.
We definitely need to look out there and find this money, these grants that are available to smaller communities like ours for police and fire, and maybe we can get some more competitive pay and some benefits. Benefits like Cody was talking about with bail. You get to ski for free for a year, your whole family. Well, we need housing as well. And there's a lot of complex issues to this problem. You can't just cut it short and say, well, this is what we're going to do. No, there's a lot of things we need to do. And some of that is going out and getting this money, getting these grants, and hiring more officers and more firefighters, and a little bit more competitive pay. Let's make it look good. Let's come up to top. Let's get these people to come up to top and stay here.
Yeah, so this goes back to my answer earlier about, from the police department about recruitment and really being able to recruit the type of people that want to come to Tahoe, live in Tahoe, and play in Tahoe for Tahoe. And recruiting that type of person that wants to be part of this community. It's housing, it's long-term sustainable funding. No one's going to disagree that firefighters deserve to get paid more, and we need to dedicate our money to that. But something, not to be too repetitive, something we don't often think about is spouses' jobs. Especially in some of these services, there's a lot of people that want to come here, they can find a job, but their spouse can't. That really we need to look at economic development and job creation as a whole. So if you're a family and you're coming up here, it's not dependent on one person finding a job that's going to pay to support the entire family, but it's about both the husband and the wife, or wife and wife, or husband, whatever it is, to be able to both work in Tahoe and afford it, and that goes back to economic development.
I want to start by saying that I trust Chief Meston implicitly. When I sit down with him and he tells me that our wages are not competitive, that our retiree benefits are not competitive, I don't think twice about it. That's how much I respect the man. As I said earlier, the first step is we need to sit down with Scott and the finance department and make sure that we're all on the same page, that there's no money in the budget to pay the increased wages that we need to pay. Once we get to that point, I would look for the union to help us go out to the voters to find the appropriate tax to fund the wages and the retiree benefits to make sure that we have the retention and the recruitment that we need. Our town has a history of supporting education out of their own pockets. We need to first see if they're willing to do the same thing for fire and police and public safety. If they're not willing to do that, we need to do what we always do, is go back and hit the tourists. And whether that's an increase in transit occupancy tax, or an increase in a real estate tax, or an increase in a sales tax, all options are on the table if we need to find the money to make sure that we have the public safety resources that we need.
When I make a budget at my home, I put my money where I value it. And police, fire, and safety services are a priority, and they shouldn't be always the first things cut. In the last few years, there have been increases in admin, the attorney's office, development services, and in the same period of time, we've gone from 5 officers on patrol down to 3. We've gone from 4 crews in the fire department down to 2 crews in the fire department. And so a lot of people can say that these are our priorities, but we're not putting our money where our value is. And that's what needs to be done. We need to put our money where we value things. And I value those things. And that is what is important. This city was created for police, fire, and roads, which includes snow removal. And if we can change what we value, what you are telling us that you value, what the citizens of this community are telling us that they value, and we put our budget where that is, that starts with the people in this room.
So yeah, for me, I think that, the fact is, it's not Scott's job to come sit down with us and find the money in the budget. It's our job, and that's our job to make sure that fire and police are absolutely the priority of our budget, and they should be. And there's no reason that they're not, other than the fact that we've directed those resources to other departments. The development services has risen as much as it takes to keep Fire Station 2 open since we've closed Fire Station 2. So it's about priorities, and we've got to create the priorities and make sure that the city council's priorities are fire and police, and that's the fact of it. What I think we need to do for the fire department to make it more attractive, essentially, is we need to find a way to have retiree health. The rest of the fire departments in California are doing it. We have to do it to attract those people. The fact around our stations and the state of our stations, when I went and met with with Chief Metzen, we need to remodel the stations. You guys live there and rest your head there. The fact that we haven't put money into remodeling those facilities of 2 of the fire stations since the 70s, I think if I were to come do an interview there, I would think, wow, how at the last city I was at, the place was incredibly nice. This place hasn't been redone since the 70s. Those are the little things that I think that are in the budget that we can direct from city council to directly help, help the fire department. And those are things that I would do.
Do you have any follow-ups? Yeah, Tom, well, let's get a list. We got Tamara, Tom, okay.
I just want to make a point. 25% of our general fund budget is police, 16% is fire. Public Works is 13. General fund is only 7%. We have prioritized our police and fire and roads. When you look at only 7% general fund and you look at it, that total is 54% of our budget goes to our police and fire. So it is a priority, has been, will continue to be. Is it enough money? No. Do we need to continue looking for more? Yes. I sat the same time when Hal was talking about we had to cut budgets. We've set a reserve aside of 25% of our general fund. I went through those 70-some cuts. Painful. There were human beings we laid off. That's why we put 25% aside so we can at least soften that next time.
There are 9 people in the finance department, and there are only 8 people in the fire department right now. That's a problem.
Any other follow-ups?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that I'm not saying that we can't do it or we won't do it as far as raising the funding. I'm just saying that in order to do it, we need to take a long-range look at this thing, and it needs to be incorporated in a long-range plan, because when we hire these people, it's an intention for perpetuity. It's not an intention when the cycles of the economy go up and down that they lay them off. So this council's going to have to sit down and realize that any increase in the costs will impact other services, but that's okay. It isn't we're not we won't, but we're going to have to sit down and actually look at our long-range budget and make it.
Okay.
I just wanted to point out that, yes, in 2015, we decided to save $1.5 million by closing Fire Station 2. We increased development services by $1.6 million to make it a one-stop shop for developers and builders to not have to go to TRPA. They can only come to the city. We gave up a fire station for that to happen. And now we have a Whole Foods development, and we have other things that's what the priority of those resources are going to. I will pledge to you to not let that be our priority. Our priority will be fire and police.
Okay. We actually have time for one question from the audience. We're going to do 1 minute for that. We'll be able to get through that, and then we'll do the closing comments. Okay. So we're going to start with Devin. We did have 2 questions, but one was on Station 2, and I feel like we've covered Station 2, so we're actually going to move a little bit outside of public safety. If you were faced with the final vote to use eminent domain for the Loop Road, would you vote for it with the information today you have?
Yes, so there was actually a presentation today at TRPA Governing Board about the Highway 50 revitalization project, aka Loop Road, and if it came down to the fact that for that project to happen, if there was one holdout property left, I would be supportive of using eminent domain to replace that project. The Tahoe Transportation District, which will be implementing the Loop Road project, has pledged that before they start tearing down buildings and start putting in the new road, that all the replacement housing will be built and in place. So it's not going to displace our residents who are already living in substandard conditions. So yeah, at the end of the day, if it's one property, I would support it. If it's every single property in the path of the highway, I would not.
Yeah, the eminent domain question is something that the city will face eventually, because there will be a last man standing situation. What it requires on the part of council is that 4 out of 5 council members would have to vote to implement eminent domain. If we get to a situation where 95% of the people in the affected area wanted to sell, and there was 1 or 2 last people that were holding out for funds that were really ridiculous, and that's a tool that was provided to governments to solve that issue and do what was in the greater good of the community. So yes, if we get to the point where 95% or so of the people do want to sell and 1 or 2 people are holding up the project with unreasonable demands, yes, because the benefits of the Highway 50 revitalization project to our community far outweigh the very painful decision of having to use eminent domain.
First of all, I think that before the loop road happens, the voters need to vote on it. Second of all, when it comes to eminent domain, I'm a hard no.
Yeah, I would echo Tamara's concern that the voters have already spoken, they've gathered the signatures. The city, for whatever reason, has sent the city attorney to the appellate court to question the technicality of law if the people can question, have this question asked. Why that is, I don't get. The people have spoken clearly. My opinion with the Loop Road is that, for one, we had a grand jury report about 10 years ago with, I believe, 2 of the members here being on the council, and the grand jury said that we were very irresponsible in the use of eminent domain. And from my understanding, we still haven't paid those bills all the way from the people that we used eminent domain against. So I think the Loop Road could use a lot more work. I think there's great benefit to the community, but I think we could look at looping to the north, go down Normwoods Drive, which is already a bunch of commercial property on there, and we would destroy no businesses, no housing, and we would loop to the north. I also think we could loop around the 56-acre project so that this side of town gets some benefit, and it's not just for property owners that's increasing their rent, while the rest of us as property owners, our rent goes down. So I think Loop Road needs a lot more thought, and with it, I think we wouldn't even need to use eminent domain. We were already found to be irresponsible. A grand jury clearly told this council that we should not be using that, and we voted to not use it again.
Well, to clarify, if there's any property owners complaining about eminent domain or not getting paid, it had nothing to do with the city. The city, when you go into eminent domain, the city has to put in escrow the amount, the fair value of it. Well, they have to, in the city, they have to get paid. It's the law. The people who suffered the most are the ones that took second notes out and didn't use eminent domain. Eminent domain usually works on the side of the property owner, the courts, and they have to get paid, that's the rule. But yes, I think that project is important enough, and if there's one holdout, small holdout, we would have to do it. We have too much investment in here, and like I mentioned earlier, sometimes eminent domain is just adverse condemnation. Sometimes people will do that as a tool to postpone their taxes. But this will change our community as much as our redevelopment at Heavenly Village changed our community. And so yes, I think I would do that.
I think eminent domain is something that we keep in our toolbox. What TTD has done is reached out to these owners. Most of them, these are very blighted homes. Most of them are very positive about being able to get the assessed value and be able to move. Also, with that promise, and it is a promise, of having replacement housing that could be a choice for them. So I do agree with a project of this size. When I look at what a difference the gondola project has made and can realize what a difference that will make, our casino area is also old and tired. If you look at our casino area and what it could be, and with that road closed or limited, I would also use eminent domain if it came to that, and hope it wouldn't, because I think we're working very positively, but for that one holdout, for the greater good, and I think that is the job of the council.
Before I even consider that, I gotta look at the project. The Loop Road is something that has to benefit both sides, California and Nevada. If we see that it does, and some of the economic studies that I've seen it does, then I take a hard look at it. But I'm not excited about the eminent domain. That's some human being's property. This could be a little old lady in her 80 years old that's had this in her life all along. By the way, the council did vote 5-0 not to use eminent domain. So to change that, it'll have to come back to the council to consider. So I'll take a hard look at it. I'm not excited about it. But if we're going to take a look and hold up this whole project and not get additional housing out of the project, that's something, a great concern to me.
I'm currently one of the attorneys that are presently in the appellate court fighting to put the question of the Loop Road on the ballot. I believe the people need to decide that issue, and not a few planners on TRPA or the Tahoe Transportation Commission. I I do not support eminent domain. I think it was badly applied in Project 3. While the developer did buy some of the properties and had seconds, it was always under the threat of eminent domain, and they didn't deal with the developer, and the city would take their property. A lot of problems, no one was protected, too many abuses. I do not support eminent domain. I believe the loop road the question should be placed in the ballot, so let the people decide.
I'm not a big fan of the Loop Road project, the way it stands right now. I'm more of a fan of Cody's idea. I've heard this idea for a couple of years now being kicked around about going on the other side. Rather than the mountain side, let's go on the lake side. We've got more space, and then we wouldn't have to use eminent domain, of which I am no fan of eminent domain at all. I don't like taking people's property. I don't like telling people what they can and cannot do with their property. Therefore, I'm also not in favor of Measure T. Thank you.
All right, so we'll do closing comments. I'm going to go over to Tamara to start. You can do follow-ups for these. We just don't have time to do follow-ups on that question. You can use that in your closing comments if necessary.
Thank you so much for having us. Again, I think that police and fire and the nurses are so important to our community. Safety services are something that have been put sort of, everybody says they're first, but they're not really. And I think you have an opportunity here to make sure that you are put first. You have many people up here that have committed to putting you first, and I am one of them. And I hope that I have proved that to you. I hope that I have committed that. I've been saying it for years. I have made those promises, and I have put my money where my mouth is. I've attended every single city council meeting for the last 2 years. I've been supporting you. I have put my time in, and I hope that you vote for me on November 6th.
As most of you know, this job is extremely hard. You're getting shots taken at you all the time. The pay is rather minimal. The hours, if you do the job right, are long. It is 20 to 25 hours if you really dive into this job and do the reading and attend the meetings. Yes, by law, you can only show up once in a while, but if you really do it right, it's 20 to 25 hours. I also believe in diversity on city council. You don't want 5 people who are all attorneys. You don't want 5 builders. You want good diversity with lots of experience in different areas. What I bring to the table is a very deep understanding of our #1 industry, which is tourism. I also have a very deep understanding and involvement of our #2 industry, which is recreation. I've got over 20 years of experience in the business world with large budgets and managing and running large organizations. That's what I bring to the table, that experience. I hope you would agree with me that having at least one person of that type of background is critical to the future of our city, and I ask for your vote.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here tonight. It was an enjoyable experience, as all these forums have been. But really, at the end of the day, I'm running for city council. Because like I said, I was born and raised in this community. I went away to school, and I was lucky enough to be able to move back, find a career, find a wife, and make this place my permanent home, and something that I think a lot of our kids that grow up here really want to do. And I'm running for city council to represent that next generation of community leaders that are really raising the bar and diversifying our economy, creating new jobs, new industries, based on outdoor recreation, based on our great environment, based on that quality of life. And as a city council member, I would support that and really advocate for what we're trying to do and the future of Tahoe. Our city's 50 years old. We're going through a midlife crisis, and I'm ready to carry us forward and what we want to do with the later half of our city's life. Not that it's going anywhere.
I also want to thank all of you for having us up here again. This was a great forum. I enjoyed it very much. What we need to do this election year, we need change. It's definitely time for change in the city of South Lake Tahoe. All of us can sit up here and talk about our experience and what we know about how the city government works. Some of us know a little bit, some of us know a lot. Some of us have years of experience. But what we need on this council now, we need new blood. We need fresh faces. We need new ideas. We need the diversity that we've spoken about. But we need the new blood and the new ideas to make all of these things happen. Tahoe is on its way to becoming a world-class destination. Let's take it there. Let's all go there hand in hand.
The questions you posed today are tough questions that face every local government. I support the police, not because you need the equipment, because I want to keep the public safe. I support the fire department, not because they need more equipment, because I want to keep our community fire safe. I support housing solutions, not to just meet your needs, but to meet the needs of our entire community. We're all one community. And while you provide a valuable service, many other people that work in this community provide valuable services also, and together we have one community. And that's my perspective. I believe I have the involvement in past initiatives, engagements of the community, my knowledge as an attorney, that I can bring some value to the council and help make good decisions for all of us in this community.
Again, thank you. I wasn't quite sure what to expect tonight, but I'm pleasantly pleased with the outcome, and thank you very much. I put my money where my mouth is, and I put my vote where my mouth is over the years. I've constantly supported police and fire. If you look at all my material from day one when I got on the council, I said police and fire and snow removal and roads are our priority. I'm proud of my record. I want to continue on. One last comment. There may be snow on the summit, but there's still fire in the furnace. Thank you. I'm in a drought.
Thank you. I want to thank the audience. And the candidates, this is our last forum of 8 forums. So we've gotten to know each other well, and I appreciate the respect everyone's shown to each other. You know, there are a lot of topics. There were a lot of topics tonight. I guess what I would ask is when you vote, you decide who you want to be making decisions on whatever that topic is for the next 4 years. You never know. Like I never knew I'd be talking about cannabis. So I'm a consensus builder. I'm a collaborator. I'm a fair, rational leader. I come to you with some wisdom. I come to you with some experience. And I come to you with 100% dedication to this job and to the community that I love. So this is, though, ultimately your choice and your vote. And the most important thing is vote on November 6th. So thank you so much.
First of all, this is a public safety meeting, and I think no one, and I mean no one, in this room or this community doesn't value public safety. So I hope this isn't a measure of who loves the police, who loves the firemen more. We talk about this city council being about diversity. I agree completely. I think we need young, inexperienced, new ideas thinking out of the box. I think we need people of different backgrounds, different trades. I offer an experience unrivaled by anyone else here. I have served through 2 depressions. I don't know how many people remember 2007. It was horrible. And if anybody thinks that we're not going to have another recession in the next few years, I'll bet my house we're going to have another recession in the next few years. We need somebody who's been through all this, and we can do long-range planning and make sure that if we're going to commit ourselves to some big commitments, we assure that we can make the payments. I offer 20 years of experience. I'll dedicate the next 4 years to help this council get through the crises that are ahead of us, as well as all the successes. And I'm asking for your vote one more time.
I'm also very thankful for you guys having us out tonight. I'm incredibly grateful for what every one of you put your life on the line to do every day for our community, and I will live that commitment and understanding out through my time on council if I'm elected to be. We are moving into a new way of the world on many levels of things, especially with regards to policing and some of the things that we've seen over the past few years. And we really need leadership that understands how to look at these new ways of the world under a new scope. And there's many things that are in regards to the policies that have changed in drug policy and all sorts of things that a new set of perspective, I think, will do a great deal of good for the future of South Lake Tahoe. And my commitment is to absolutely ensure that you have the funding and the things that you need to keep yourself safe. We have got to make things like our communication systems rise to the level of an emergency when it's an emergency. And my commitment will always be to know that and see that when those emergencies are there, that we act and we act immediately. So thank you.
All right, well, that concludes our questions in the forum. I'd like to just extend thanks to all the candidates again for putting yourselves out here, taking time, 8 forums. So if there's any question that you guys aren't sure about being on council, I think you're getting good training if you weren't already on it. So, and then I'd like to just, on behalf of the nurses, police, and fire, thank everyone for coming out and for supporting this political process and supporting public safety in this community. So thank you. You guys have a good night. Be safe out there, and it's an honor to serve you guys.